Welcome, Highlander fans, to Blooded Kings, a Highlander podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. On this show, we cover everything from the Highlander universe. On this episode, we've got a fun discussion. It was started from a little post I put on Blooded Kings, an article I found, created a little bit of hubbub, and so Lee and I have decided to do a show based on this, and that is Blooded Kings Highlander Podcast, episode 162. Duncan MacLeod's Deadliest Immortal Opponents. My name is Kevin. I'll be your Blooded Kings Highlander podcast host, but please welcome my co-host, Mr. Lee Fillingsness.
Sorry, I just jumped out of a parallel dimension. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, your camera shook. That was pretty funny. So, Lee, before we go forward, I want to introduce the person that's behind the scenes, my brother from another mother, and also the fellow co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Kyle Wagner.
You know, it's about time I actually get to hold the sword over both of your necks, because, yeah.
Okay, so what we're doing here is, Blooded Kings fans, is the Fandom Podcast Network is going to be doing more YouTube stuff, and that's what we're doing right now. We're YouTubing live, and we're using StreamYard now, so we're having a lot of fun doing that, and Kyle is going to be helping us produce this and do some cool stuff with us and do kind of a little behind-the-scenes stuff. And first of all, Kyle, I want to say thank you so much for helping us out on our first official Blooded Kings YouTube Live.
Yeah, you know, it's what I do. I mean, did you know how you listeners out there, you have no idea how hard it is to make these guys sound good. And now they're live. I can't promise what's going to happen.
He's given up on making us look good, but he's making us sound good.
Yes, ladies. And without the sound effects, I kind of sound like this all the time. So Kyle's really doing the Lord's work over there.
And for those of you watching, yes, this will also drop as an audio podcast as well. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast and you want to see the video of this, please head on over to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give us a like. We appreciate it. And if you're watching live, please like the actual episode you're watching as well. We'd appreciate that. But Lee, we're kind of back from a little bit break. Recently, last year, I guess you could say. And we had one drop in January, too. We did... Antonios Callis. Oh, I messed up.
Finally, you didn't mess up the entire other episode. You finally messed up. I've been waiting for it. So at least you did it on this one. And, you know, considering we have two very close names in fandoms, both very close to our hearts, Callis in this one and Callis in Star Trek.
Well, you hosted that episode because you wanted to bring one of the best villains and give an extra special love to them.
Oh yes, sir, and you know, with consent, of course. But oh, you meant something else. Sorry, yeah.
Well, make sure you check that out. It was 161 where we talked about Antonios Callis.
Yes.
And we did some fun with Highlander 2. First of all, we did the Highlander 2, the 30th anniversary retrospective, but we also did the fixing on Highlander 2, and I think we did a really good job doing that. So I was proud of that. It was good. It was good. Yeah. So, and just real quick too, we also did a Band of Brothers revisited. That was a lot of fun. And we also talked about best Highlander quickenings. Head over to the fpnet.com master feed and just click on the Blood of Kings link there, and you can see those episodes. But we're going to tease the episode here. Lee, we've got Blood of Kings Highlander podcast 162. This is Duncan MacLeod's Deadliest Immortal Opponents. That was fancy, wasn't it? That's cool.
Yeah, man, I feel like a real boy.
Okay, so Lee, this is the deal. We were doing, I did a post on Blood of Kings, and it was an article that we found. That was a new article, and it was on Screen Rant, and it was put up on July 23rd, 2021. And that caught my attention because when anything new happens with Highlander, I got to kind of flag it and look at it, because the only thing that people really been talking about that's new is, of course, the new movie that's coming out starring Henry Cavill, the reboot, directed by Chad Stahelski. When I found this list, I shared it with you, and we put it on Blood of Kings, and it got quite a lot of responses. Not necessarily good responses either. But we had mentioned, we teased at that time that number 5, Antonius Callis was on that list, and we were talking about him in that previous episode. So I thought that we would go over this episode, as we would like to call it, the Highlander of the series, Duncan MacLeod's 15 Deadliest Immortal Opponents, the Fixening.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to read off, starting from 15, the list of this guy's most deadliest immortal opponents for Duncan MacLeod?
Yes, I will, and I'll be doing it as Casey Case. No, I won't. I won't put everyone through that. At number 15, this goes out to a special young man named Kenneth. He was our youngest immortal that we saw in the series. Actually had 2 really good episodes. Number 14 is Lord Byron, an interesting concept. Number 13 was Gabriel Larca. Number 12 was Grayson. 11 is San Quince. Number 10, Ottavio Consone. Number 9, Canwolf. Number 8, Liam O'Rourke. Number 7, Harish Clay. Number 6, Xavier Sinclaud. Number 5, Antonius Callis. Number 4 is Jin Kay. Number 3 is Connor MacLeod. Number 2, The Guardian. And number 1 is Jacob Kell.
Okay, so what was your first reaction when you read this list?
I think these were the first names that came up when he did a web search on people that Duncan MacLeod fought, because most of these are stupid and wrong.
Yes, this is okay. So I don't know if this person is a big Highlander fan or if they were kind of writing this just to rile us up. If that was his case, it worked.
Yep.
What would you say is the worst addition to this list?
Oh gosh. I mean, they're all so bad, but I mean, the Guardian.
Yeah.
Fat guy running a circle around him to beat him. I mean, that's like,
yeah, definitely.
You know, like he was plot armor, the bad guy. Like he wasn't actually a good fighter at all. They just made him kill people. So
yeah,
I did not like him.
That's a good one. Or not a good one, but a good choice for that too. I was gonna probably go with either him or I don't know, Slan maybe. I don't know, just because he was kind of cartoony. I don't know.
Yeah,
you know?
and that was a really bad fight.
yeah, definitely. Let me ask you, what would you say of this list of where the villain is located on his list is pretty accurate?
Canwolf.
Yeah. Canwolf is at number 9. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say that's pretty good. It definitely wasn't the best, even the best part of that episode. Definitely wasn't the best sword fight in that episode, but definitely it's a link to Duncan's past. So he's an important bad guy, just not a particularly good one. And as we found out, it would have been played by a much better actor if he had picked up his phone. Robert Chapin, a friend of myself and Anthony DeLongis, got the call but ignored it because he didn't know anybody in Vancouver and just figured it was just a wrong number. And they wanted him to play Canwolf, and I've just been a fan of his forever. And, anytime I see him, he just would have been the perfect guy to play that role.
I'll go into this later, but the one where I like is Harish Clay at 7, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later. So,
okay.
I did want to mention another post. Well, first of all, is there anything else you want to mention about this list here?
I don't think Connor should be on there.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah, but what's your reason?
He was never actually a threat to Duncan.
Yeah.
We kind of see him in episode 1, just kind of not really fight well. We see that he's beaten by the guy that Duncan beats. So we already know there's a different level there. And he goes into the fight wanting to lose. So he wasn't a threat to Duncan at all.
What about Jin Kay? Can we make an argument for Jin Kay here just because of his martial arts skill, and he kind of handed, Duncan, even though Duncan was cornered by more than one immortal in Endgame? Do you think Jin Kay is a match?
And I kind of went into this on the other episode. I feel like Jin Kay should have been the bad guy of that movie.
Right.
He is far more historically significant.
Or at least the one to turn tail and become a become a friend or something. I kind of felt that about him because he had some honor to him,
Yeah, and I'd also say that Duncan held his own against him one-on-one after fighting 4 other people, like right after. So he's
Right.
already tired. He's already
Yeah.
been hit a few times, and he still held up. Obviously it's the choreography, but just in the reality of that situation, Duncan's already at least equal. And then we see Jin Kay either give himself willingly to Jacob Kell or to just throw himself on his own sword, depending on which cut. And like he
Right.
wasn't. I wouldn't consider him a bad guy.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, one thing I want to remind people is feel free to search Screen Rant for Highlander series, Duncan MacLeod's Deadliest Immortal opponents. And the guy goes into a little bit more for each reason why he chose who he did. But the number 2, the Guardian, number 1, Jacob Kell, we're going to come back to that. And I have an issue with Jacob Kell overall as a Highlander villain. And I will explain. Well, no. There's the one reason's pretty big, and I'll get into that later. But there was another post I found on YouTube by Crazed Weasel, and this guy has a lot of subscribers, and he did his own video. He's a Highlander fan. He self-admitted big Highlander fan, and he had top 10 Highlander villains, and it has over like 229,000 views. And this was done back in August of 2011. And he's very funny about it when he does his reasons why. And, he says, this is his list, but, here's why I do it. And he does explain it. At number 10, he has Giovanni from Highlander the Source. And he explains why. Number 9 is Larka from Little Tin God. Number 8 is Lord Byron from Modern Prometheus. 7, Grayson, of course, from Band of Brothers. Number 6 is James Horton. Now, remember, he didn't say immortal villains. He said villains. 5 was Consone, 4 Kurgan, 3 Xavier St. Cloud, 2 he just said the 4 Horsemen. He put them all together.
Mm-hmm.
And number 1, Callus.
So I'm just gonna say this guy likes all the drama queens.
Yeah, I know, right?
If you look at that, like the most down to earth one is Horton on that list. Everyone else, Byron basically invented goth.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. And he just reminded me of something that I may have to adjust my list later on. So, but did you have any reactions to this guy's list? I mean, this was just, it wasn't Duncan per se's villain. It was just Highlander villains.
Giovanni, he's not exactly a villain in that one, but he is kind of a piece of crap. So I have no problem with him being on that list. At first I'm like, ew. And then I'm like, you know what? Yeah. I like him better as a villain than the Guardian.
The guy, what's his name? Crazed Weasel has some funny comments about that, but he's very funny. I suggest you go on YouTube, check out this thing. It was about an 11-minute video, and it was very entertaining. So, all right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get to our own reactions in the Immortal Buzz. All right, so this article on Blood of Kings got some interesting responses. Mm-hmm. Jill said, "Oh please, Kenny, Grayson, as meant to be, Consone, St. Cloud, and Kalis deserve to be on that list. Jin Kay, Clay, and Connor? Question mark? No. And those overhyped Kell and Guardian? What a great response! I love it." Thomas said, agreed. If Connor's on the list, why not Amanda? Interesting. Jill also said, probably because they never fought. Well, it depends how you think about fighting. Matt Wright says, I think if Duncan and Connor had squared off under different circumstances, Connor could have been Duncan's deadliest rival. But since Connor never intended to kill Duncan, we never got a true fight. Kathy Butterfield said, no Kronos? Andrew Cord? Oh, yeah. Good call out. And then I said, I thought Kronos should have been on the list, but maybe Kronos would be on the Mythos top 15 villain list. So we'll come back to that one. Noah said, Kell and the Guardian are way too high, Kevin. And he says, no Kern, no Kyler, no Christina. And Jill chimes back in to Noah, says, Kern, maybe, Kyler, iffy, Kristen, more of an annoyance. She was no danger to Duncan as long as he had his head on right. Kelly Doak said, Consone needs to be higher up. Guardian needs to be removed. And what? No Kronos? I'm also not convinced that Byron was deadly at all, except to mortals. He had a death wish, which is totally different. And then I said, Kelly, I think Kronos became more of a mythos villain. We'll get into that. Kelly says to me, I don't understand how he can be ranked barely above Slan and just below Canwolf. This guy was a master of sword discipline. Duncan was sure he could beat him, and they dueled for hours. Speaking of Consone, of course. John M. Hazlitt said, effing Kenny, man. I think I get the feel of what John was saying there. And our good friend and my former co-host and founder of Blooded Kings, Norman Seelau, says, person who wrote this list doesn't know the franchise, period. Stephen King was deadlier to Duncan than 3/4 of this list. He nearly broke Duncan morally and ethically to the point of surrender. Anyone who watched the series and saw him would know this. I'm sure we'll come back around to that. Good point. Good point, Norm. Jill said, also the OP said villain, so King wouldn't fit. Interesting. And then Norman said, why not? Keen was coming for Duncan's head, so technically he's a villain. At least to Amanda he was. Villains are simply antagonists with agendas contrary to the hero of the story. And there was a good discussion between Jill and Norm there about that, so I got to give it to them. That was definitely really good. Charlie Cox said, Larka? Quince? With a very funny, like, rolling eyes, gif. Let's see what Fabio says. Oh, Fabio says, Kenny escaped. He didn't kill him. Jill says, nor did Duncan kill Jin Kay or the Guardian. Bonnie Gwen Faye said, you've got to be kidding. Byron? He just killed some mortals. What about that makes him the most deadliest? What about Kronos, Caspian, and Silas? They all killed a hell of a lot more people. Even sick Mythos on there. He was a lot more deadly than Kenny.
I mean, we did see Byron kill our good friend F. Braun McAsh.
This is true.
So he does have at least one immortal kill that we do see on screen in a duel. A lot of these guys we don't have. We just have him facing off against Duncan.
Colton said, get Quince off there and move Consone up a bit. I can't argue with that. So anyway, that was any thoughts on those comments there? I think a lot of our fans were pretty smart about this list not being a good one.
It's always good to hear what Jill has to say. She's definitely one of our more vocal commenters. Good stuff.
She knows her stuff too. She does.
Yeah.
She's great. Yeah,
and Norm and I are on the same page on Keen. That's kind of definitely a good argument for him.
Okay. All right. Well, that was it for the Immortal Buzz, guys. We're going to take a quick little break here from the Immortal World of Highlander and let you know what other great shows are here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to these other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, discussing the latest in entertainment pop culture. Blooded Kings, Immortals Take Notice, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theaters, where we celebrate our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie and TV pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville show. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our show covering the time-traveling Doctor Who universe with host Dan Hadley. Lethal Mullet, an 80s and 90s action film podcast with host Adam P. O'Brien. Also check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast with hosts Scott, Derek, and Nathan. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. And check out our newest shows, The Fandom Show, our monthly Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube exclusive show about the month's hottest topics in fandom, and the FPN True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related Marvel television and streaming MCU universe, including the connections to the original Marvel comics. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on several platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel to receive notifications of new podcast episodes and live events. You can enjoy all of the Fandom Podcast Network audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPod Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to Blood of Kings. We've been discussing Blood of Kings Highlander podcast, episode 162. Welcome. We are discussing Duncan MacLeod's Deadliest Immortal Opponents. And we've already discussed the article that inspired this discussion and this podcast, Lee. But we're going to get into the main segment here and really get into it. All right. Now, real quick, I did want to mention we did have one last addition from our Blood of Kings family. Vince Stefanelli said, "Come on, it's Michael Christian, case closed." Love that, Vincent. Well done. Okay,
I think we can end right there. I mean, he just checkmated us. I mean,
we're out. Goodbye.
Take care, everybody.
All right, let's get into the talk here. So before we get into our choices of the immortal villains, Lee, I did a little kind of breakdown of the notable villains throughout the seasons. Now, some of these, there's some that I left out, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some I put in here because maybe they're not really the deadliest, maybe they're most annoying, yeah. Depending on how you did it. But season 1, these are some of the notable ones. We got Slan Quince, The Gathering, Caleb Cole and Mountain Men. After I take your head, I'm going to take your woman. Sorry.
Cloud. Duncan, that's his name.
We have Alexi Voshin from the Sea Witch, Walter Reinhardt and Revenge is Sweet, Grayson, Band of Brothers, Kyler for Evil's Sake, Xavier St. Cloud for Tomorrow We Die, Zachary Blaine, The Lady and the Tiger, Alfred Cahill, Avenging Angel, and Colonel Everett Bellion from Nowhere to Run. Thoughts on season 1 villains?
Well, I got a soft spot in my heart for season 1 villains. I see why Kim Sun's not there, but I feel like he should be. And I would actually swap Gabriel Platone for Kyler, since they pretty much shot the final duel in the same location. And Gabriel Platone had more style, and he was also King Arthur. So I think one of the better fights of that series.
You're picking out what I didn't put. Okay, gotcha. All right, season 2. That's all right. That's funny. That's what you should do. Hey, Adam O'Brien, by the way, says hi, y'all. What's up, Adam? Of course, Adam is our host of our Lethal Mullet podcast on the Fandom Podcast Network. Make sure you check out the Lethal Mullet Network as well. And Adam has been a guest on Bloody Kings before. Big Highlander fan as well.
And he's getting in touch with us from Australia.
Yeah, I know.
The Thunder Down Under, man.
Yeah. He says, what's happening in the world of immortals? Yeah. We're talking about the deadliest villains for our opponents, I guess. Deadliest immortal villain opponents for Duncan. But let's go into season 2 here. We got Michael Moore / Quentin Barnes from Turnabout, Anthony Galen, Epitaph for Tommy, Xavier St. Cloud again for Unholy Alliance Part 1 and 2. We got Nicholas Ward, the Vampire, Arthur Drake, Draco and the Warmonger, Nefertiri, Pharaoh's Daughter, Luther, Legacy, Martin Hyde, and Prodigal Son. Lee, thoughts on the villains of season 2?
Yeah, I really like them. They got away from Immortals a lot in this season. Kind of leaned more towards some other, the Horton and the Watchers.
That's why that list is smaller.
Yeah, but they had, I think, some really great villains. Anthony Galen, great. Quentin Barnes. That was kind of a little bit of a mind trip the first time I watched it. I was a kid, so I didn't pick up on the very obvious clues they were leaving everywhere. But
right.
I like that one. And of course,
Adam, by the way, Adam, by the way, gives a shout out to General Katana from Highlander 2. He's a big fan of him. So, Michael Ironside there. We've discussed him in our Highlander 2, the fixing and the retrospective as well. Season 3 gets the list is a little bit longer here. We got Michael Kent, the Samurai, Kern, Line of Fire, Paul Karras, and the Revolutionary, Amon Thorne, and as the Cross of San Antone, Brian Cullen, Courage. Kenny, the Lamb. David Coe, Obsession. John Garrick, Shadows. Lyman Curlow, Blackmail. Michael Christian, They Also Serve. There you go, Vincent. Callus for Song of the Executioner, Starcross, and Mythos. Then we got Christoph and Testimony. Ernst Daimler in Mortal Sins. And Callus is back for finale part 1 and 2, where he teams up, where we also have a small Xavier St. Cloud appearance as well in part 1. Thoughts on the villains of season 3, Lee?
My professed love for season 1 and season 2, I was, as I'm doing my list, kind of really surprised how many season 3s I pulled from and how few I pulled from later seasons. So that's kind of, but yeah, there's some great stuff in there. Is this the season though with Benny Kilbasa? Was that season 2?
I left him out. I don't remember what season that was, but he was not getting on this list. He would be like the most annoying villain of all time. No,
I know.
No,
he's the Jar Jar of Highlander.
He is. That's why he didn't make the list. Some of these are still annoying, but some of these are a lot better than him. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Season 4, we've got Canwolf, Homeland, Andrew Cord, Brother in Arms, Peter Canis, Leader of the Pack, Kenny, and Terrence Kincaid in Reunion, Colonel Simon Killian, the Colonel, Paul Kinman, Reluctant Heroes, Kamir, The Wrath of Kali, Jim Koltek, Something Wicked, Kasim, Promises, Damon Case, The Immortal Chimoli, Warren Cochran, Through a Glass Darkly, Morgan Disdain, and Xavier St. Cloud in Double Jeopardy. Damon Case, he was the guy that just played the game, and he was going to play the game to the rules if he could.
Yeah. All around good stuff. Damon Case definitely is one of those that kind of stuck in my mind when I was making my list. Just a really good all around character.
Yeah. I was looking, what was it? Oh man. Colonel Simon Killian and the Colonel was good because remember he captured Duncan, and he did a good job doing that. That was pretty cool. All right, season 5, we've got Roland Cantos in Prophecy, Harish Clay in The End of Innocence, John Kelly in Glory Days, Gerard Kagan in Haunted, Gabriel Larka in Little Tin God, Kronos, Silas, and Caspian comes a Horseman in Revelation 6.8. Octavio Consone in Duende, Lord Byron in The Modern Prometheus, and Aramin in Archangel. This had some baddies, dude, this season.
Yeah. I will say that other than the Horsemen and Consone, I wasn't impressed with any of the bad guys in this season, though.
Interesting.
I like the ideas of some of this, but I didn't really, other than those two, I didn't really pull any from my list from 5.
Okay, well, I pulled someone from season 5, and I'm not talking about the Horsemen. So this will be interesting. Okay. All right. So season 6, we had Airman again in Avatar and Armageddon. Then we had Devin Merrick in The Black Tower and Liam O'Rourke in To Be and Not to Be. Thoughts?
I'm glad that the season wasn't longer if this is the best they had.
All right. So let's talk about Highlander Endgame real quick here. Okay. I got some thoughts here. We have notable villains: Jacob Kell, Jin Kay, Carlos, Winston, Cracker Bob, and Connor MacLeod. Okay. Now, Cracker Bob had a bat, but our buddy Ian, we know him, and we had him on the show. Had to put him on there. I think that if he had a better weapon, he would have been a little more, villainy, I guess. But he had a bat with spikes. That's got to hurt someone, I mean, there you go.
And that will remove your head from your neck after a few swings.
Yeah.
I don't know how much stump you need to have on top of your neck to live, but I don't imagine much of it would be there.
Let's talk Connor MacLeod first. Okay. This is a contention that we have. And then I want to talk about Kell. And I have an issue with Jacob Kell. But let's talk about Connor. I think our fans and friends of Bloody Kings have said it best. He didn't want to kill Duncan at all. He's not a villain. He forced him to kill him, and he didn't want to live anymore. And he knew that Duncan and his skills and his fighting prowess had the best chance to beat Jacob Kell if he could get the power and knowledge and all that from his own quickening. So he pretty much just said, you need to kill me, brother. And he forced him to do it. I don't think he's a villain in this.
Yeah, me neither. And like you said, he went in there intending to give his quickening to Duncan. He did not go in there intending to win.
Yeah.
And just like the first fight Duncan has with Mythos, like it was not meant to be. We don't really ever have that fight to decide which one of them is the best. One of them definitely survived longer. But I think, I'd take Connor completely off this list.
Well, yeah, I agree. Me too. So I want to talk about Jacob Kell. Kell was on number 1 on that Screen Rant list. And he gave reasons why, but I disagree. Here's my reason why, Lee, and I want to get your thoughts on why I don't even want to include Kell on this list at all, because I feel, as much as I do enjoy the film, I feel the villain of Kell was manufactured to become this gigantic villain to threaten all immortals, including our stars, Duncan and Connor, and including the kill count and all that kind of stuff. I don't think he earned his right to be Duncan MacLeod's villain. If anything, he's more Connor's villain. And I feel in the writing, it was just, let's try to come up with someone really, really bad that we haven't seen before. Let's create these kill counts that make him with the most amount of kills. I think that if they would have drawn something from the TV show more, or maybe something related more to the Kurgan itself, and kind of done a villainy type that way, instead of just having this guy who's just trying to collect as many quickings as he can so he can take on Connor and Duncan. It just seemed too manufactured, and I don't think he earned the right to really be Duncan MacLeod's most deadliest immortal opponent. Your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. And one of my main things is we never see him actually as lethal. Like he lets people put the sword to his neck. He fights Connor, and then he just kind of talks him out of it. He had a relatively good fight with Duncan. I won't take that away from him, but he's not. We have no sense of him actually being good. And after seeing the display that Donnie Yen did, it's like, how is this the guy that's the danger?
Yeah. He felt like he earned it a little bit. And my only issue is with, how, Jin Kay went out. I would have liked to have seen something different there. And I agree, he should have been the main villain, but I just don't think that, Jacob Kell as a villain really stands up to what our list is coming up. And I just don't think it was written well enough. Like I said, feels like more of a Connor villain. We get the backstory between him and Connor anyway,
Yeah. And it would have been, if Jacob had, in the final version, in the original version I saw, if he had actually killed Faith, then yes, that would have been a reason, an impetus for Duncan to say that's my villain. But like, he didn't. He just goes after him because we know Faith is alive at the end. So it's like he killed his friend in order to go after his friend's enemy. Even though, come on, Mythos has to have over 600 heads.
I know, right? Exactly. Yeah.
And there's no. Just the sheer number of people that he knows that are old. Marcus Constantine, all these guys.
Right.
Like, there's.
Right.
They didn't really think that through. And honestly, if you're going to have somebody that's going to be that big of a bad guy, make him believable as a bad guy. All he did was dirty, angry voice and staring eyes. Like, there was no. He was not a threatening. And speaking as somebody who plays a bad guy almost exclusively in movies, like, you have to do something more than just melodramatically act. You have to bring something to the table that makes the audience forget that you're fighting the hero who is obviously going to win. Yeah. And you don't have that with this. And, he did what he could with the material. I'm not taking anything away from his performance, but he's going up against a guy who has a bajillion times more sword fighting experience. Yeah. Just like the actor wise, so you're not going to have a good fight, and I'll just keep beating this dead horse. Jin Kay should have been the bad guy. Would have been much more interesting.
Agreed. All right, Highlander: The Source, 2007. We get the Guardian. We get the death of Joe. We get the death of the Katana. Ugh. I think this movie just disqualifies any reason for anyone to be a contender. A guy that runs around really fast and he's got something that protects his neck. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and let's not overlook that he was a leather daddy. You know, I mean,
explain that.
Well, in certain communities, big, heavy-set dudes dressed in leather
Gotcha.
are
Done.
sought out.
All right.
Yes,
Understood.
and are known as leather daddies.
Okay.
Not my community, but I am an actor, so I am peripheral to that, and it's very. You can be open-minded and still be like, okay.
we can't really, even though it's out there, you know, us really big Highlander fans just discount this movie. We just don't, you know, a lot of us just go, you know what, it's there, but we don't really accept it as canon. And they've done stuff to kind of write around it since then. So we're not going to take the source into consideration at all, even though they tried to make the Guardian as villainous as they could.
I would watch a 24-hour marathon of Phantom Menace before I watched The Source again.
What about Bless the Child?
Oh, yeah. I would watch it with director's commentary, you know, after watch. Like, I would, yeah.
Okay.
I would do my homework and play nice with my sister before.
Hey, Kyle, can you come back on for a second? I want to bring you into this real quick.
What can I do for you, gentlemen?
Okay. First of all, Lee brought up something before we started the show, and I think it was a good thing because we decided, and I wanted you to give a little plug to Culture Clash here. We've had a segment called the Fandom Hall of Fame, where we look back and we discuss something in fandom, whether it's our favorite movie cars or favorite movie weapons, and we each pick 7. But we have something where we have people that or things that are nominated that just walk right into the Hall of Fame without any question. Like for
Kevin, stop. I'll answer your question right now. Yes, the source walks into the Hall of Fame without any problem at all.
Okay, I want you to know that I'm the guy with a Thunderbird and a ponytail, and your name starts with K. You need to rethink that statement.
Yeah. Okay. So Kyle, back to the Fandom Hall of Fame here. We've had, like, for example, we did one with weapons, and a lightsaber walked right in, right? You know,
yeah, absolutely.
And so we discussed this before we start the podcast that we picked the top 7 that are going to be in the Hall of Fame segment, and so we've done that with this podcast, and we're going to return to the Fandom Hall of Fame. But explain, Kyle, why we chose to have this what we call walk into the Hall of Fame and what that means.
This is very appropriate because actually the Baseball Hall of Fame just had their elections, and it's a perfect example. What they call the walk-ins, or what we call the first ballot Hall of Famers. They're so clear cut. It's hands down. Baseball just had this for you sports fans out there. David Ortiz from the Boston Red Sox yesterday was a first ballot Hall of Famer, no question. So it's a sports reference for you people that are not into sports ball, basically. Yeah. But in this case, it's the same premise. These villains, these characters, these weapons, whatever we've chosen on Culture Clash, it's just so outstanding, so iconic. We're not going to waste a conversation on this because there's no conversation to be had. It's like a weapons. You take a lightsaber, one of the most famous weapons in movie history. It goes right in. Nobody's going to question it. Nobody's going to say no, it doesn't belong there.
Yeah, and I think for like what was it, spaceships and vehicles, I think we had the Millennium Falcon walk right in. You know,
yeah, I think the Enterprise also.
The Enterprise walked in as well. Yeah. So okay, so thank you, Kyle, for explaining that. I'm going to have you come back a little bit later, and I want you to give your 2 cents, maybe your top 2 or 3 villains of all time, because I want you to think about it. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna put on my neck protector, and I gotta buff up my leather suit, so I'll do that while you guys are talking.
All right, Leather Daddy. Okay, so Lee, walk-in first ballot Hall of Famers. We decided to take 4 right off the top 7 and give them their Hall of Fame walk-in. If it's NFL, you get the gold jackets and all kinds of stuff. And Lee, I'm going to have you mention the 4 that are walking in Hall of Fame and give me a quick, brief why.
Well, before any of this, I'm just going to say something I realized without even doing it on purpose earlier. These 4, you and I have done episodes on 3 of them, and the 4th when I won the fan contest is the episode that you and Norm did. So all of these, Kyle was saying you don't need to waste a conversation on them. We already did, everybody. You can go back on Podbean and find these old podcasts and see, like, we have over an hour dedicated to each and every one of these guys in their episodes.
Yes.
But we do have Grayson. We
Right.
do have Ottavio Consone. We do have Antonius Callis. And we do have Xavier St. Cloud. Easy walk-ins, and we could just go back and
So
read.
question,
Yeah.
question for you then. What would you, out of these four, what would you put in number one?
It would be a toss-up between Xavier and Callis, just for the amount of time that they spent harassing Duncan, the closeness of the fights, all that stuff. Like I would say, love Anthony to death and everything that he did, and as well Grayson. Fantastic villains, but they didn't have enough screen time to elevate them beyond that.
I would put Callis first, and I would put Grayson second, just because that was the time when we first saw Duncan really fear that he was going to lose his life, and then I would put Consone, and then maybe Xavier Cloud after that. That's what I would do. So yeah. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to mention our top 7 of the other guys. Those 4 guys, they walk in Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Walk in, they deserve it for obvious reasons. Okay, we don't need to debate that. Okay, we've made that decision. We have honorable mentions. We're going to do about 3 of them. So Lee, why don't you give me your 3 honorable mentions of Duncan MacLeod's most deadly immortal opponents?
First honorable mention is Gabriel Platone. Absolutely love him. Just a great episode. So much style to it. A couple of really great, very different kinds of fight. Alfred Cahill, he was one that is. I've surprised to find how polarizing he is, but he's the crazy one who thought that Duncan was the angel Gabriel. And then I have 3 that are kind of the same but deserve to be mentioned in the same breath: Ernst Daimler, Kieran, and Karos, and they're all war criminals.
I love the Ernst Daimler one too, but yeah. Good one.
All of those, I like bringing them in. How about yours?
Gotcha. Okay, so I added one after going over the list here. I did throw in Liam O'Rourke because of what he was able to do at the end of the season, at the end of the series, and put everyone in those predicaments. And there was a couple of good moments. I think it would have been better if it was a different maybe actor, I guess.
Yeah,
probably would have been better, but I like the planning behind everything, and I got to give him credit for that. Number 2, I'm gonna throw in Kenny. 800 years old, having to be a young immortal. He has to play on the people's hearts, and he gets you at the last moment. I mean, that's just mean. I'm going to wait with number 3 because he's on your top 7 list, but I'm going to throw in my other honorable mention. That's Andrew Cord. Andrew Cord. I just thought very well played, and that was a great episode for the origin of Joe. And that dude had the military. He loved to fight. He was all about military, and he was scary that way. And he believed and breathed, died military, and the whole questioning him thing was dangerous. And so that's my my honorable mentions there.
He almost made my list too, and I'm glad he's on yours.
Yes, yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our top 7. Let's start with number 7 for you. I have him as well, but I have him tied with someone else. But I'm going to let you go on number 7.
I went straight to Kern, played by the immortal Randall Tex Cobb.
He's so good. Yeah.
Everything that he brought to the scene, the danger, the menace, played kind of a similar character to Brian James later on in the Cross of San Antoine, but did it better. You felt the threat, not only to Duncan, but to Richie, and the darkness of him, taking the scalps. What do you got there, squaw man? Like, just he leaned into being a bad guy in just the best possible way.
Yeah. Well said. I had a tie with Kern, and I'd put in Nefertiri. And the reason why I put Nefertiri in there, not only Nia Peoples played her very well, but she's one of those immortals that people can underestimate, because she's not necessarily the best swordsman, but she's conniving and you know, she can influence people, and she can just, there's other ways to kill immortals than just straight up sword fighting, and she has that skill, or people in general. And she seems so charming at first, and she was beautiful, and
And
obviously and naked, yes. Duncan fell for her for obvious reasons, but when she starts to turn and get nasty, can't underestimate that. Scorned woman, especially one that's immortal, got to watch out. So there you go. All right, what do you have at number 6? I'm kind of curious.
I got to throw it down for Quentin Barnes. Just love the dude. It was such an interesting twist on, he spent, a lot of time killing his friends. This is the one time where he's dealing with something a little different. I love the whole setup of it. Really just a fun character.
Yep. Okay, cool. I actually have him on my list on number 5, Michael Moore / Quentin Barnes. I'll just jump to 5 before I get to 6. And I just wanted to add, I thought it was a really good, the whole split personality, Jekyll and Hyde thing, I thought was done well. And I like that idea that a friend of Duncan turns out is this other person as well that we don't see. And it's the first time you really see an immortal be like crazy and heckling, and it just, I thought it was done well. And I think a villain like that is definitely very scary. And I like that. Also a really good sword fight. I love the beheading in that one as well. So what do you have for number 5? And then I'll just go back to my 6.
I went with Brian Cullen.
People had issues about him being chosen.
I really did like it. His backstory, the idea that he had been this great duelist, that he was just batshit crazy, drugged out of his mind, driving the wrong way down the road. He was almost like a living embodiment of a Dennis Leary road rage incident. He's absolutely insane, and it's one of the most desperate fights we've ever seen from Duncan. He hits him with a van first, and then true. Like Duncan's clawing through the van, he throws a tire iron at him. Come on, that's dope.
We got a message from Adam O'Brien. He says Scott Adkins should be in Highlander. What do you think of that, Lee? I agree.
I think that would be really good. Just leveling up the fight level. Dude knows what he's doing. And he has enough of a background in like traditional arts that he can bring like some of that old school style, like we saw in Old Guard, where they're using classic techniques, but they know him so well that they can do it. I think that Scotty could definitely do that.
Yeah, and his acting is coming along a lot, really well. He's done some really good acting. So for a great martial artist. Okay, so my number 6 is John Durgan / Armand Thorne in The Cross from San Antonio. Done one of my favorite characters of all time. Rest in peace, Brian James. The reason why I like him, and it's a little bit related to my number 2 pick, which I'll mention later, but I love the fact that this is a guy who is uneducated, barbarian type. And even though he killed people, he learned how to get an education eventually and use his education and his immortality to gain wealth and power and sustain that over 100 years or so. And I think being able to do that, becoming rich and sustaining, planning your immortality ahead of time to where you can fake your death and then come on with something new and do something like that, and staying on top of financial situation, I think is a great villain and is a huge threat to Duncan. Your thoughts?
Well, first thought, I got to say, like Duncan said, pig in crushed linen is still a pig. The other thought I had when I was rewatching the episode recently is what a weird parallel his character is to Jean Valjean in Les Miserables, who steals silver from a priest, but is then forgiven and goes on to this life and is hounded by Javert through the whole thing. Obviously, we get a little different take on this in that episode, but it's a very interesting parallel, and I imagine that nobody in the writer's room was not aware of it, because writers are all literature nerds and they steal from all the best sources.
Yeah, that's good. Good one. Okay, so number 4, we have the same same thing. We have Dark Duncan / Airman, I guess we could say.
Well,
or you just want to go with Evil Duncan?
Yeah, I was going with Evil Duncan.
Okay.
From the when he took the Dark Quickening from Coltech.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm with you there. I okay, gotcha. Yeah, I agree. Dark Duncan. He's definitely a villain.
Yeah, and obviously very deadly. Willing to kill Richie. Willing to he does kill Sean Burns. And brutally murders him.
Yeah.
He's stealing cars, and he is probably the greatest threat to the legacy of Duncan MacLeod. And I could quote a bajillion military philosophers and warrior quotes, but to fight oneself and to overcome oneself is kind of the path of the warrior.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna make it a tie with Airman because he affects Duncan in a similar way, and Duncan ends up killing Richie because of this, and makes him and he's immortal.
Yeah.
So yeah, good choices. Dark Duncan and Airman. All right, what's your number 3?
Garrick.
Ooh, why? Good choice though.
It's kind of like we were talking about Grayson. It's one of those times where Duncan felt like he was going to lose. And like the fear, the level that it affects him through that episode, the brilliance of the choreography. I mean, just the imagery that he's using. I just thought it was one of the best episodes that they ever put out, and I absolutely loved it, top to bottom, and very cool episode.
Yeah, definitely. My number 3 is Harish Clay, and I'll explain why. The fact that he killed one of Duncan's mentors, forgetting his name, help me out.
Graham Ash.
Graham Ash, thank you. But the thing that I liked that he did, and this affected Duncan mentally, was when Duncan confessed saying he shamed me.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, I think, can weaken someone and make them not be 100% when it comes to the mental aspect of fighting a skilled villain. And that's what I liked about that episode. And I thought Harish Clay was a great villain. And that I felt too, that was one that Duncan kind of struggled to win as well, because of how that mental trauma he had of being shamed while he watched this guy kill his mentor who he loved.
Yeah, and I didn't put him on my list because I just did not like the fight. And it may be the way that it was filmed. It may be that they didn't have enough time to rehearse it, but you can see that it got sped up in a few places. I never felt the real threat from Clay to Duncan in the present, and that's all respect to the actor and everything. I just didn't feel it.
Gotcha. I did.
I know you did.
All right, number 2 for you, sir.
Anthony Galen.
Yeah.
It was just such an over-the-top fight. Getting a guy that lives fighting, like Roddy Piper did. May he rest in peace. Was amazing. You get a sense of a careless malice, which is, as an actor, is a fun thing to give your characters, because you get to enjoy and stretch your legs a little bit being a bad guy. And he's not just mustache twirly like Zachary Blaine was, just evil for the sake of evil. He was having fun. He was living his best life. And, that happened to involve killing people every so often. I loved his portrayal. Every moment he was on screen, he was great.
Style too. I loved his style, and the sneer. Yeah, God, Roddy, rest in peace, Roddy. He was good. Good choice. I almost put him on my list, but I saw him on yours. I'm like, okay, I could choose some other stuff here. So, all right, my number 2 is Michael Kent. One of my favorite episodes, and the reason why I chose him, and the thing similar to John Durgan, was this guy was rich, and he was able to maintain his wealth. But the thing was he had his own katana, and he had respect for it and the Japanese culture. And that fight is one of my favorite fights because Duncan gets his sword caught and he's about to die, but then he does that cool blade catch with his hand to save his life. And then there's a great behind the scenes where Efron talks about that, about what is that part of the blade called, Lee?
Oh, the spine.
The spine, and he catches it, and he's able then to do some martial arts and then disarm and then finally take Kent's thing. But Kent was a great villain because of just how mean that he was to this lady who, Duncan had taken an oath to protect the lineage of. And I felt that with his influence, his money, and all that kind of stuff, again, that makes a really, really good villain. So, all right. Who is your number one and why?
Stephen Keen.
Norman agrees with you, buddy.
Yeah. I really felt that he had the most reason to go after Duncan. He went after Duncan for the same reason that Duncan went after other villains. And he forgave Duncan for the reasons that Duncan forgave other villains. I do like a good complex ending. I do like that he
wasn't killed, right?
He was not.
Yeah.
He survived the day. He went up against Amanda and Mythos and survived, and went up against Duncan, did his best, and just had this great finish to it that also is very similar to a movie that we did, The Duelists, where he's like, this is over now. And you just have that kind of similar moment, like looking into the sun and pondering what the next step is because this part of life is over. I just really thought that it was brilliant on the part of the writers to have this guy as a bad guy.
It's good. That's a great point. That's a great point. I love it. And a good choice. And Norman agrees with you. Now, before I give you my number one, we need to talk about these other guys and why we haven't discussed him yet. And that is, and I'm going to say the Three Horsemen. Okay. Kronos, Caspian, and Silas. Why they are not on our list. Okay. They're not my number one. And I'm going to get, I'll get to my number one in a second, but we need to talk about the Three Horsemen here. Obviously they were huge threats to Duncan, but I'm going to make the argument, Lee, they were villains. They were Mythos's villains.
Yeah.
And this was more of a Mythos kind of episode when it comes to the Four Horsemen and Revelation. I mean, this is him standing up with his buddy Duncan, and Duncan helping him that great fight at the end there. But it's who takes Kronos' head?
That was Duncan.
And then who takes was it Caspian that lived now? Who's it?
Duncan also took Caspians, and Silas was Mythos. Yeah. Okay,
Silas Mythos. So even though the fight was with Duncan, I think the fight was really with Mythos, because you can tell Kronos is kind of testing Mythos and seeing if he's really is going to join the Four Horsemen. And yes, they were all bad and stuff, but I think when you think about the greater villain in this, it was the plan to kill the world, right? Whatever you want to say, but I just don't feel that we could just write the Three Horsemen and slide them in there somewhere if you want. But what's your thoughts? What do you think?
I think they didn't leave a great impression on me. In terms of like choosing best villains, I looked right over them. I saw the names. I had them on my long list before I narrowed it down. But I didn't really have that same sense, whether it was the way they were directed. And I do think you brought an interesting point there, Mythos villains, and the way that it plays out, it's almost like Mythos is playing Duncan to take them out because maybe he can't.
Right.
And because he can't take out the three of them, but he can take out one while Duncan takes out the other. And so I think that Duncan was the weapon in that, but this was really Mythos's beef. Duncan really doesn't have that great of a reason to go after Kronos or whatever his alias was in the Old West.
But what a good quickening to get for Duncan, though, Kronos.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So yeah, so that's why that's not why they're on my list, and Lee makes a good argument for why they're not on our list. I mean, and they seem like the easy pick too, to be honest with you. As much as I love them, they're just too obvious, you know. So
Mhm.
I wanted to really kind of dive into the reason why we're doing this. Okay, so I may have broken a rule here, Lee. My number one, James Horton. What? He's not immortal. Well, hold on. Let me make the argument. Hear me out. I've always said on Blood of Kings that for me, James Horton is the best villain throughout the TV series and one of the best villains of all time. So he escapes Duncan, thinks he's dead, or excuse me, Joe. Joe shoots him. We think he's dead. He comes back. He keeps coming back. Keeps coming back. You think he's dead. Even after he dies, he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And he haunts Duncan. Okay. Comes back in flashbacks.
Yeah.
Let me name the episodes that James Horton was in. The Hunters, The Watchers, Unholy Alliance, Part 1 and 2. Counterfeit, Part 1 and 2. Turns his old lady against him. 1 Minute to Midnight, Archangel, Avatar, Armageddon, To Be and Not to Be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 episodes of Highlander. James Horton appears. Now, technically, being immortal means you can't die. Well, when you look at pop culture, until I'm proven otherwise, Keith Richards is immortal. I mean, when someone keeps coming back to haunt you and just be around you to torment you, and also being able to escape and being in charge of these group of hunters who are watchers is one of the biggest threats to immortals of all time. Technically, he wasn't immortal, but in a way he was. So that's my argument for my number one to be James Horton. Feel freely to disagree.
Now, I think there's an argument to be made that when you say immortal in Highlander, we're specifically talking about people whose quickening you can get.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you were gonna, allow one of those to go over the plate, Horton is it, because correct me if I'm wrong, he is in 5 of 6 seasons.
Yes.
So
he's always around.
Yeah. The only one that he didn't come in was in season 3, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Yes, I think so.
So I mean, he has an impact there. I'm sure this being the internet, somebody's going to have a problem with that, and call you a beta male or something. But it's there's a solid argument there for it, and if we're talking villains, we can't leave him off the list. Yeah. I don't know about number 1, but he's definitely deserves to be in the top 7.
12 episodes, Lee.
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle, come back on here. I want your input on something.
I have thoughts.
Okay, so I want you first of all to give us your thoughts of our discussion thus far, and shoot us your top 3 Duncan villains that are not in the Hall of Fame that we already put there with their gold jackets. Give us your thoughts. What do you think? You've heard us.
Since Kevin has already cheated in this episode and just made this whole episode about his everlasting villainous crush on James Horton, James Horton is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He should be right into the Hall
so
of
he
Fame.
should have just walked right in with the other immortals, huh?
I think he was the greatest threat to Duncan and everything that was the show. I mean, with the Watchers and everything. So
thank you, Kyle.
However, again, Kevin breaking his own rules. Lee, you talked about that. You have the Thunderbird, you have the ponytail, and Kevin's name starts with a K. I'm just saying.
So it's yours.
Oh yeah, I came here ready to take both your quickenings. I'm fine with
this. So Kyle, what is your thoughts on your favorite top 3 Duncan immortal adversary, opponents, villains, whatever?
Well, I'm gonna be honest. It's been a while since I've watched any Highlander episodes. They keep a lot on my plate. I got to edit these guys.
I know. I put you on the spot.
Yeah, you can put me on the spot here, but you know what? I'm kind of with Lee, Michael Kent. Aren't you, Michael Kent? Kevin, I'm sorry, that was good. I do like Anthony Galen as well.
I think because you're a wrestling fan too. I'm just saying.
Well, I love Roddy Piper. I have a soft spot for Roddy Piper. But I gotta agree with you with Airman, because Richie, I mean, that's what more evil act can you do, and what better way to destroy MacLeod than to have him be the one to kill Richie? So
yeah,
I mean, that's just evil personified right there. So
can I say at this point in the series though, he should be used to killing his friends? Like, it's not that big a deal.
Do you really get used to killing your friends though?
Duncan does. After a while, he just smokes a doobie and just gets over it. Like, he's constantly killing friends. It's not that big a deal. And he's only known Richie a couple of years. Like, he's killed people that he knew for centuries already.
Yeah.
Well, close. So
I think we came up with a good list. Kyle, your thoughts on the list? Anything jump out at you?
I think you guys did your normal, phenomenal job of covering all aspects of immortal villains of Highlander, even if Kevin cheated. I mean, but I expect that from Raider fan. That's all I'm saying.
James Horton cheats a lot, so I'm just going to give it there.
he's just following the footsteps of his idol. I understand now.
All right, well, let's go ahead and let's get into our final thoughts. All right, Lee, I think this is a fun discussion. Thank you for agreeing to do this. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think we've been doing this for 1 hour and 7 minutes. If Derek Draven had actually spent an hour and 7 minutes thinking about Highlander, he would have come up with a better list than this. We had the walk-ons, and I don't think we picked any of the others that he had there, except for Harris Clay. And so like everything else, everything that he picked from Endgame was just stupid. So I think this was fun. I like having an IRL internet argument. Basically that whole chat that we referenced earlier, it's like, yeah, just two people, and Adam occasionally saying something, and Kyle dropping in. I like having that, and I think at this point we can probably claim to be a bit more knowledgeable and fans of Highlander than a guy whose name is a pun on The Crow.
Yeah, this is true. Well, I'm grateful for the fact that he put it out there, because it created a really fun discussion on Bloody Kings and also this podcast. So, which happens to be, our first time using StreamYard on Bloody Kings and doing a live podcast. So at least there's that. So there we go. All right. Well, I just want to say this was a fun topic, and we'll probably maybe return to talking about, maybe villains in general, because there's so much fun part of Highlander. And, the Kurgan started it all, or technically, was it maybe Iman Fasil? Is he a good villain? I don't know, so.
We don't know much about him, but we know he does backflips, at least in the the remastered version.
This is true. All right. Well, let's get into some contact information here. All right. First of all, if you're listening to this, make sure you check out the YouTube version. You can see the video of us and us acting and looking very funny. So make sure you do that, and subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network to get a notification for other live events that we're going to be doing. And we're doing a lot more of these. And this, of course, is going to drop as an audio podcast as well. But we would love on the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. And that's where the Blood of Kings episodes will go for the video and stuff. So, and also on our audio podcast master feed is fpnet.podbean.com. And you can also download that Podbean app. And if you want to go to the master feed, you want to just check out the Blood of Kings stuff, just hit the Blood of Kings button there, and you can see and stream it all from there. So, and of course, the Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, which includes Apple Podcast and iTunes. And please, if you aren't already, please check out our Blood of Kings Facebook group, our Highlander fandom Facebook group. There, we've got a great group of people there. We got we're reaching we're reaching towards 3,000 members there, so make sure you check that out. Bloody Kings is also on Twitter and Instagram. And also, hey, did you ever play that Highlander collectible card game? Remember that? Well, people are still playing it, and we have nurtured that community with our sister group, the Bloody Kings Highlander CCG collectible card game and gaming discussion group page there on Facebook. And they're organizing tournaments and they're releasing new virtual sets. It is awesome. If you'd like to contact us directly, you can email us at bloodykingspodcast@gmail.com. My name is Kevin Reitzel. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Lee, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at The Way of the Way if I'm not out there hunting down Derek Draven.
There you go. You can support us two ways. First of all, Apple Podcast, iTunes reviews, or leave us a rated review on your podcast platforms. Just search Fandom Podcast Network and then leave a review for Bloody Kings. We love 5 stars, of course, but we love feedback in general. And Kyle, we got some TeePublic stuff here. Make sure you go to TeePublic and search Fandom Podcast Network or Blood of Kings. I got a cool Blood of Kings t-shirt. I got this banner behind me. We've got other from our other shows too. All Bloody Kings, of course. We've got the Team Iron Pipe t-shirt or logo you can do as well. But we got logos for pretty much all of our shows on the network. And you support us when you purchase from there as well. It helps us keep the lights on us here. Thank you so much, Kyle. Much appreciated on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, just real quick, Kevin. 35% off site-wide sale right now on tpublic.com Phantom Podcast Network store.
You save a lot of money on that, guys. And they have these sales a lot. Sign up for the TeePublic text and emails, and they will let you know when they go on sale. So much appreciated, Kyle. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, so we're working on what's next, Lee. We'll probably do some more fixinings and stuff like that. We got the Highlander movie that's filming this year, so we'll definitely be doing more information on that. Is there anything you've been thinking about Highlander-y that you'd like to cover that maybe we can do down the line?
I've been thinking about the books.
Yeah.
When we did the Callus cycle last year, we just kept on brushing up against one of my favorite characters that they didn't develop in the series, but Hamza al-Kahir, his teacher in Morocco. There's a book called Scimitar that I still have on the shelf. It's a fun read and just a different journey for Duncan. Kind of fun.
Okay.
So I'm looking at maybe doing the books. Measure of a Man. Getting another historical character in there. You've got Niccolo Machiavelli. So some fun stuff. So maybe we'll get literary with it.
Okay, so I just want to throw something else at you. Somehow we got to get you a copy of the animated series as well. We might have to kind of return to that.
Oh, I have that. That unfortunate atrocity. Yes, the machine gun that never runs out of bullets, even though you only see 12 sticking out the side.
Anyway, just stay tuned to the Bloody Kings fandom Facebook group, please. We've got a wonderful discussion there. So anyway, Kyle, thank you so much for the man behind the scenes here and helping us out, man. We really appreciate you.
Hey, it's always fun to make sure you guys stay in line, and now I can just boot you out whenever I feel like it. So it's a lot of fun.
Kyle can run his own.
Live another day.
Yeah, Kyle can run his own show. Thank you so much, Kyle. We appreciate you, dude. All right, so that's it, guys. I'm Kevin, and on behalf of Lee, thanks everyone for listening and watching. And join us again next time here on the Fandom Podcast Network for another episode of Bloody Kings Highlander Podcast. That sensation you are feeling is the quickening. We are one. We are immortals.
Farewell, dear shithead.
Goodbye, everyone.